back on. Okay, guys. Good evening to you, and Robert. Good evening. So today with us again, renowned researcher and writer, jurist, Freemason, and antiquarian Robert W. Sullivan IV. And today we try to discuss not only the intentional elements of the coding of the media, movies, and advertising, but also we try to delve into the supernatural aspect. And we try to see if everything what we see of the occult coding in the movies is intentional, or there is some kind of supernatural element of it. Robert, what have you dug up in the previous several months of your research?
Right. Well, I've been looking at some of these Crowley numbers regarding the goat of Mendez, this number 42. And they're quite pervasive in not only things like 9/11, but in a lot of these other tragedies. And whether it be school shootings or the Kennedy assassination, some of the stuff we've talked about before. We just had here in the United States another shooting literally last night in Lewistown, Maine. And I didn't know about it. It happened later in the evening. I had turned off the computer. I had no idea about it. I found out about it this morning, and immediately when I saw that this was a mass shooting and this guy was going into a bar shooting up the place, then he went into a bowling alley shooting up the place. This has all the hallmarkers just on of its face of one of these school shootings, whether it be Columbine or Uvalde or whatever. So of course. The first thing I started to look for was these numbers, whether it be 77, 42, 777, and of course, if there's some sort of latent Wizard of Oz reference in there, which there always seems to be, and sure enough, and it didn't take me too long to find this out. Of course, the investigation is still ongoing, so I'm sure more will come to light. But as of right now, and I'm speaking to you I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, so I'm speaking to you on the afternoon of October 26, 2023. We had this guy named Robert Card go in Lewistown, Maine. There's no motive given yet, although he was obviously mental of some kind, had mental problems, it seems. He went into a bar called Schmenge's Bar and Grill, and right off the bat, the area code, the first three digits of the first three digits of the phone number of this place, the area code aside, are 777. And then you look into Lewistown, Maine, that's 77% Caucasian. And then the three zip codes of this place all begin 042. So, I mean, here we have right off the bat all these, kill numbers, these critical numbers, and again, this thing is only hours old. I mean, here they are, right out in front. I know there will be more surfacing. And about 20 minutes before, I put this on my website, by the way. If you go to my website and you go to my blog, you'll see this. And of course, I couldn't help myself to see if there was some sort of Wizard of Oz citation in there, and sure enough, there was. And again, this is all coming to light. I haven't even really begun digging in this. I'm sure there will be other instances. But in 2 weeks' time, at the Lewistown Public Theater, there's a play coming up called My Witch: The Margaret Hamilton Stories, which is a sort of a one-woman show of a person portraying Margaret Hamilton, who of course was the Wicked Witch of the West, telling these Wizard of Oz stories. So I mean, here we have these synchronicities that are just too hard to dismiss, that just occur over and over and over again with these incidents, and it's truly remarkable to say the least.
How old is this guy? Because I haven't read too much about this incident. I'll try to avoid the actual name of this event because of the filters of the of this platform we were talking. So what was his age? And of course, the motive is never given, because usually when they report about such a mass events, There's no reason given. The reason only given after several days, and they doctor something. They concoct some kind of reason.
One of the things you had asked me was this guy's age and birth date, and that's actually
Exactly.
out there. The guy is 40 years old, but what's interesting is with his birth date is actually April 4th, 1983, which of course April 4th is 44, which is the number of Horus, and April 4th, 83 is the 10-year anniversary of when the World Trade Center opened on April 4th, 1973. So that's a little nexus. There's always seems to be some sort of overlap.
What is the connection 44 with Horus?
Yeah, if you read Aleister Crowley, that's the number he gives as the number of Horus, Horus the sun god, and it's in the Book of Lies, and it's also in 777. And he gets in there that 44 is the number of Horus, and then in 777 he says Horus essentially accepts blood sacrifices. So that's I found very unique indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, he was born on April 4th, which is 44. And one of the other things that's unique, and this ties into the World Trade Center. This was something that I just started looking at. And I mentioned this to you, I think the last time we were on, was the lunar cycle with this stuff, and specifically the blood moon.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so odd about this is if you go back in time with the World Trade Center, you had it opening on April 4th, 1983. You had a blood
73.
moon. 73. I'm sorry, you're correct. 73. You had a blood moon years later in the 80s on April 4th, the same day. But then when you get closer to the event of 9/11, this is where this thing really gets strange, is you had a blood moon, which is a lunar eclipse. I believe it was on June 28th, 1999. That's 777 days before 9/11. And then you get to and then you get into 2000. You had a lunar eclipse on January 9th of 2001. And this is odd because you had a lot of stuff. You had a lot of eclipses that year, which is abnormal. Then you had another lunar eclipse on July 5th of that same year of 2001, and the time frame between January 9th and July 5th is 177 days. Very odd. And then what also is unique is on the summer solstice of 2001, you had a solar eclipse of all things. This is when the sun turns into the black sun where you can't see it. And that was on June 21st, 2001. And the time between June 21st, 2001 and July 5th, 2001 is 14 days, which is, of course, is 7 plus 7, 7 doubled. So you have these numbers popping up with these, very odd solar and lunar eclipses that seem to be very pervasive. And just so you know, the lunar eclipses are what are known as blood moons. And if you look them up in mythology, those are always ill omens, foreshadowing, tragedies, end of the world type things. Very, very peculiar with that.
Speaking of the eclipses, there has been an eclipse very recently on the October 14th, right?
Yes.
And it happens to be the birthday of the George Floyd. Remember the guy who was asphyxiated, strangled by the cop on the 25th of May 2020, which is TT, Twin Towers, in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, St. Paul. And it happens to be that the same day on October 14th, the White House and Mr. Biden personally put the message on the website of the White House congratulating Mr. Floyd with his would-be 50th birthday. And it happens to be that it's also 50th birthday of the song of Pink Floyd, Eclipse, which was a part of the album Dark Side of the Moon. And they all both featuring eclipses, of course, and the pyramid. And of course, there's a famous picture of Mr. Floyd, Pink Floyd, and George Floyd, right? Beside of Mr. Floyd standing probably in a nightclub, there's a bottle of the Corona beer, which is famously featuring the sun and the crown, right? And this we see also in Eclipse, in a movie clip of Pink Floyd, and it was 50 years old, with one exception. The one is dead, and another one is, well, the people are still alive, but basically the group, I think, no more performing as the group, because the Roger Waters is on a
Right.
solo career and so on. So there's something about this, and you rightly featured this concept, because remember the Space Odyssey 2001 of Stanley Kubrick, of course, 1969. Who was the head of the mission? Mr. Haywood Floyd.
Right.
Yeah, and if you look the shot when he's sitting in front of the NASA people, and they have this kind of hoof-shaped table, and he stands at the head of the table, and the camera, the Kubrick is always a master operator and master cameraman. He pans that such way so Mr. Floyd, standing in front of NASA people with this weird shaped table, and it looks like a pyramid, exactly like on the cover of the Dark Side of the Moon of the Pink Floyd.
Right.
If you look at it, so there's something about Floyd. I cannot quite figure it out, but the Floyd 9/11 and the Corona are connected, 100%, because they even found very famous illness in the Mr. Floyd when he when the autopsy was performed a couple of years ago. And now they're saying actually he wasn't strangled by the cop. The cop is doing 40 years in a penitentiary, in federal penitentiary. But the autopsy report says the Floyd didn't die of the asphyxiation. He died of the heart condition caused by some controlled substances in his blood. So it's a clear ritual, and of course the "I can breathe" phrase, which is also has a ritual character, but it's completely another story. Please go on, Robert.
Yeah, no, it's definitely strange how these things sync out. The Dark Side of the Moon album also is 42 minutes in length, and that's odd. And that's another thing with a lot of this, with these syncs is with the Crowley numbers, you'll constantly find 93 popping up, or 44 or 42 or 77. They always seem to be in there somewhere.
But 42 is clearly intentional, because we know the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which has this famous question, what is the reason of being, which is 42, right? So it was inserted there for the reason. And of course, Kubrick in The Shining was putting 42 everywhere. Like, for example, the bar scene where Jack Nicholson comes to the bar, there's 4 chairs on the one side, and there are 2 chairs on the other side. So clearly 42, there are 42 cars on the parking lot, I believe, of the Overlook hotels. I may be mistaken, but there's something indicating 42 as well. So Kubrick was kind of obsessed by inserting 42. So it's not like synchronicity. He was putting it on purpose.
But I think he was using it. But if you read Crowley, 42 is the killing curse, is the kill number. So I can't imagine Kubrick would want to bring down. I mean, I think he was using it on purpose. I agree with you, but I don't think he was aware of the negative connotations with the number. I talked about this in one of the books, in one of the movie books. I think it was the second one. That I thought it was a biblical reference to the Antichrist. That he was trying to transfer sort of the evil of the Antichrist into Jack. Was what I kind of got out of it. Because I can't. I mean, I agree with you. He's using the number intentionally. That's irrefutable. I don't think he was aware of the negative connotations of it. Because it seems that a lot of people seem to give up the ghost when they sort of mess around with this number. And I can't imagine that they'd want to do that on purpose. There's some very interesting things with Mr. Kubrick. Regarding this. So one of the things that I found to be odd was I'd have to pull it up exactly, but I remember that his final movie, which was Eyes Wide Shut, and this was a link, sort of a nexus to this. The final movie he made was Eyes Wide Shut, that was released on July 16th, 1999. Of course, July 16th is 77. July
666 days before his death.
Yeah, it's July 16. It's July 7. 16 is 1. Is 1 plus 6 is 7, 77. And what makes that date so strange is that's also the death of JFK Jr. and his wife and his sister-in-law. They died on the same day that Eyes Wide Shut was released. Very strange indeed. So that's kind of odd to me.
But there's another connotation and another meaning of 42, which is factual. It's not even discussed. There's the angle of 42 degrees. This is the only angle when the full arch of the rainbow is visible to the observer on the surface of the Earth. So let's say the most fullest part of the arch is visible only with the angle of 42 degrees. So this concept is clearly known to Kubrick, first because he uses rainbow in his Eyes Wide Shut, a rainbow shop,
right,
where all this Japanese hanky-panky was going on with the Mr. Milich and his daughter and the Japanese guys. And there's the rainbow, I believe, in Shining too. And of course, and on the cover of the Dark Side of the Moon, you see this prism, the pyramid, and there's the rainbow-colored refraction, right? So
right.
this aspect of 42 is clearly been known either to the creators of the album design of Pink Floyd, or maybe to Pink Floyd people themselves. But Kubrick for sure knew the concept. This is another aspect.
Well, I think so, but I don't think he was aware of the negative aspect of it. And it strikes me as if you look at a lot of these incidents, you'll see this number popping up. And again, it's to me, it's I agree with you that he's using it, but I don't think he was aware of the negative side of it. That's at least my take on it. But yeah, I mean, you will find that number, 42 is always pervading these tragedies. So it definitely has a lot of negativity around it. That's without question. At least I think.
It's also connected to the Wizard of Oz because if I'm not mistaken, Dorothy in Gematria is 42, and of course she went beyond the rainbow, somewhere over the rainbow. So 42 rainbow, Dorothy, and many other things are definitely there for the reason. So I don't know if it's
I would
accidental.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I mean, this is what I looked into. This is where I kind of have been going with this for the last 4 or 5 months with this. Is how did this thing arise? I mean, where did these numbers, how is this negativity attached to the Wizard of Oz with these two numbers, 77 and 42? And I'd have to go look this up, but also the name of the song, Over the Rainbow, in Gematria, it's one of the versions. I think it's reverse ordinal. I'd have to go look. Has a value of 77 of all things. And you're right. I mean, with it's the two most iconic things is the rainbow and this number. And I've been looking at this exhaustively, and the one thing that strikes me more than anything is I thought that I came to the conclusion that Baum, L. Frank Baum, the guy who wrote the book, must have had some sort of killing death hex put on him by Native American Indians. Because I mean, this reeks of a killing curse that they would have put down either via Skinwalker or something. And I looked into, as a lawyer, I looked to motive. The first place I looked was to Crowley. I thought, did Crowley have anything to do with this? Because they're his numbers. They're all his gematria for this new age. And I have tons of books by Crowley, and I have tons of books written by authors about Crowley, whether it be Tobias Churchton or Israel Regardie, or the Simons books and Kenneth Grant and all them. And I could find no evidence that Crowley had any beef with L. Frank Baum. There's no mention of it, of Baum or the Wizard of Oz anywhere in any of the Crowley literature. Yet these two numbers that Crowley turns up are literally the Wizard of Oz, as you point out, 42 and 77. Oz is, of course, is 77, and the rainbow is 42. And I went back and I did some research on Baum, and sure enough, I found out that he made some very inflammatory remarks about Native Americans after the Battle of Wounded Knee, where he essentially called for the genocide of every Native American in the country. And I thought, well, okay, now I've got some motivation here. You know, I mean, I've come to believe, and this is just me speaking. Certainly, we can agree to disagree on this. If you know, I mean, this is just my take on it. I believe that these numbers and this misfortune that surround these numbers, you know, are the result of a Native American death hex that was planted on Baum, but for reasons that are still unknown to me, that somehow latched onto his books, and specifically The Wizard of Oz. From what I can tell, this curse seems to be dormant up until when the movie's getting made. This is when this thing starts to become kinetic. And then from here, from essentially 1939, 38 out, you know, 38 is when the movie starts to be filmed. That, you know, you really start to see these two numbers, 77, 42, and derivatives of them, 777 or 7, really start popping up all over the place. Another number that's linked to this thing, and this is in Crowley's book, is this number 333, which Crowley designates as the number of this demon named Corazon. You'll find that popping up from time to time. So as I proceeded with this research over the last 5 months and seeing these numbers turning up, it struck me that, I mean, I'm with you to an extent that, yeah, I mean, you know, like with Kennedy assassination, yeah, could there have been a CIA conspiracy? Sure. Could there have been other people involved with 9/11? Yeah, absolutely. You know, could there have been some sort of mind control element with things like Columbine or with Sandy Hook? Yeah, I mean, possibly. But whatever, the one thing that I kept seeing was these two numbers popping up in ways that I didn't think human beings could generate them. And they also seem to be, like you said, with, you know, whether it be Kubrick or Michael Jackson, they were using these numbers, or they were turning up in ways that the person wasn't even aware of. And that's what was so startling about this. One of the things, and I'd have to go pull this up. One of the things that was, let me just type this in real fast. That was really fascinating to me with this, and again, I don't think this was planned out or anything. Was, and you know, we could get into this a little bit. Also, is one of the things that was also popping up was on these dates, and you hinted at this, when these tragedies were coming up. These dates also sync with things going on in The Wizard of Oz. You know, whether it be a filming or a debut, something like that. Very, very peculiar. One of the things was, I mean, this was just mind blowing to me, was The Wizard of Oz. The movie began filming on October 13th, 1938, and it completed on March 16th, 1939. That's 154 days. That's 77 times 2. You know, again, you know, that's very, very peculiar. If you move forward to Sandy Hook, for example, Adam Lanza squeezed off 154 rounds. I mean, again, very peculiar, 77 times 2.
That's not even all. You wouldn't believe it, how it connects to the Wizard of Oz. You know that a year later, after the event, mass event in Newtown, the kids to commemorate 1 year, they sung Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And you know, in 1981, Judy Garland released. She was. I think she's still alive. Remember, I sent you. She released "Annie, Get Your Gun." Yeah. And it was released by Sandy Hook Records.
Yeah.
So how about that?
Well, here's another one for you with Sandy Hook that's crazy. After Sandy Hook, and I believe I'd have to pull the dates up. The school was torn down and it was rebuilt, and it took 42 months to rebuild it.
So
Go
they
figure.
they teared it up, I think, a couple of years ago, right? It wasn't
It was
done then.
it was done about it was torn. The Sandy Hook's the Sandy Hook happened in December, I believe, in 2012.
12,
Yeah, the
12, yeah.
school was torn down in January of 13, and then it was rededicated like in July of 14. And if you do the or maybe 15, but if you do the math, it's 42 months later. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not an accident, I believe. Or why would you tear down the school? I mean, I know that the tragedy occurred, but why would you tear down the school?
Well,
It was still intact.
I think it was basically they just didn't. It was just an ugly reminder of what had happened, and they just wanted to tear it down and rebuild it. That's not uncommon, but they did it. And again, here was the number 42 again. Very peculiar. I mean, and again, it just
Mm-hmm.
surfaces in a way that I mean, here we go again with these same numbers, and I mean, here we go. Like I said at the beginning of the show, here we have this guy shooting. And I mean, here these same numbers are popping up all over again. It's just remarkable to me.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And what did you find out about the horror movies you recently told me about?
Yeah, well, this was something that I was watching. This doesn't really have to do with what we've just been talking about, but I was I at this time of the year, Halloween coming up. I always I just did a show on some horror movies, and one of the movies that I went back and watched again for kicks, really, that I hadn't seen in quite some time was the original Friday the 13th from
Mm-hmm.
1980. And it was just astounding to me looking at it through sort of an esoteric lens. The one thing that just struck out, that just jumped off the page, was the lunar imagery with this thing. Um, Quite remarkable. You have really, I have the Blu-ray of it here, and it was I watched some of the making of and some of the interviews, and the one guy was talking about. He said we were just trying to rip off Halloween. Halloween had been out. This is Carpenter's movie and was making a ton of money, so we were just trying to rip that off. And when I was watching it again with this imagery again, it just struck me as whether this was being intentionally implanted there, or this was some sort of coming out of the filmmaker's unconscious mind. The Mrs. Voorhees character really embodies the three faces of the moon. You have the sort of the vicious female character Hecate, the goddess of witches. And when you watch this thing, you have you have two of Hecate's totems turn up. You have the dog and the snake, and then you have mentioned twice in this thing, and this can't be unintentional. You have the mention of crossroads, and of course, the Hecate is the goddess of crossroads. And at the crossroads, we actually get to see them. There is a cemetery there, so we have the Hecate reference there. And also, when you watch the movie, the full moon appears all over the place. I mean, it's the very first thing you see. And then on the night when Mrs. Voorhees comes out and kills on the Friday the 13th, we're told it's a full moon. That's discussed by two of the characters. And then, of course, we have another face of the moon, which is Diana, which is the huntress. And of course, this is what Mrs. Voorhees is doing. She's hunting down the camp counselors, killing them brutally. And then, of course, you have the other face of the moon, female side of it, which is Artemis. And this is interesting because Artemis is, of course, the protectress of virgins. And this is the thing that always sets off Mrs. Voorhees is the camp counselors screwing around, having sex, and this is the thing that sort of seems to sort of upset her more than anything else. So I found that really interesting. And then I was telling the guy, the interviewer, I was on the show about a week ago. In fact, I think it was a week from today. And I said, I've watched this scene a dozen times, and I can't help but think that this, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it's the scene where Annie, who is going into the town, it's at the very beginning of the movie, and she's approaching the dog between the two gas pumps. A couple things. The name Annie is a throwback to Halloween. That's one of Jamie Lee Curtis's friends.
You mean like two gas pumps, like a twin towers, and a
Yes.
Sirius between them?
Well, you're on the right track. You have the two gas pumps, and then you have the dog in between them, and it was, to me, if you look at it, it looks like the moon card of the tarot, where you have the two towers and the dog in between them. That's what
Dog
it looks
represents the serious, definitely, because
right. Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's on the
absolutely.
card as well.
Yeah, and it's on exactly. And then you have the two gas pumps. I thought it looked like a replication because the movie was so overloaded with the moon imagery. I thought it looked like almost to me that the filmmakers were inserting actually the moon tarot card into the movie. Like you said, with the two towers and the dog in between it, and of course the dog also conjures the Egyptian dog star Sirius. You'll find that on that card also. I found that interesting. And again, the name Annie is a throwback to Annie Brackett in Halloween. And then you have a lot of repetition in Friday the 13th. When Annie is approaching the dog, she squats down and starts petting the dog. And she asks the dog just playfully, how far is it to Camp Crystal Lake? And when you see that, right, pay attention to the gas pump on the right side. You're going to see the word crystal light appear. And that's, of course, the type of gas, but that's a repetitive mnemonic. You have her saying Crystal Lake, and then you have the word crystal light.
Crystal light or kryptonite, like in
it's
in a
gas.
Superman.
Yeah, no, it's crystal light is what you see.
A crystal light. All right.
Correct. But it's a mnemonic. It's a repetition.
Yeah.
It's designed to implant the thing in your head. And then also you have Annie is going to Camp Crystal Lake to be the cook, she's ultimately killed off by the old cook, who is Mrs. Voorhees. And again, it's a lot of repetition going on. You have the beheading of the serpent with the machete. Again, this happens later in the movie where, again, it's repetition where Mrs. Voorhees is beheaded with the machete by Alice. I always found that the name Alice is the young lady who survives it. This was a throwback to Alice in Wonderland, where she's sort of navigating this dark, camp filled with traps, strange things going on. So I kind of threw in like a Wizard of Oz reference there. And then the one thing that I thought was pretty unique was when you watch it and you see the one camp counselor, Brenda, she goes off to her cabin. And it must be the name of the camp or the cabin. When she goes inside and she's sleeping, you're going to see the name Seneca outside the cabin. And this is a throwback to the Roman poet Seneca. Yes. And if you go look him up, you'll find a lot of his plays are about bloodshed, murder, revenge, gore. And this is everything that's in Friday the 13th. So again, for this little B horror movie released in 1980, I thought there was a lot of unique placement in this film that really, jumped off the screen that I never really paid attention to it before.
But by the way, Robert, what is your take on Friday the 13th as the date? Of course, we suppose that this date is imprinted in our minds. Let's say the people of our generation and the younger generation, because some of us know that the Templars were rounded up on Friday the 13th of 1307. But some people saying they calculated what day would have had been October 7th on what was the date? October, right? October
13th.
October 13th. Some people say it falls on Wednesday, not on Friday. So we have to recalculate because they were using the Julian calendar by that time. So I have to do the calculation because I haven't done it. I always supposed that it was the date of the rounding up of the Templars all across the Europe, and the similar concepts like the Elm Street, the Nightmare on the Elm Street is because JFK was killed on the Elm Street, practically, right? So that's why they imprinted the horror in the form of a horror movie in our mind, and of course it happened after the fact. Because the Nightmare came out in 79 or
I think it was 80. I think it came out in
or 80, something like that, right?
Well, yeah, the Friday the 13th motif is obviously what you said is correct. It's because the Knights Templar were rounded up on October 13th, 1307, and we're here in October 2023, and we just had a Friday the 13th in this month.
Exactly.
And you're right. We had the solar eclipse back on whenever it was on the 14th and 15th. Now we've got a lunar eclipse coming up again on the 28th. That's interesting. We'll see if anything happens there. the blood moon again. Who knows? But yeah, absolutely. You're correct with the dates and stuff like that. Doing recalculations, you had pointed out that this to me the last time, and this ties into like 9/11 was if you look at 9/11, the month September actually comes from the Latin septem, which is seven.
Seven.
Right, because that was the seventh month of the year.
7/11. 7/11.
And exactly, if you multiply 7 times 11, you get the number 77.
77.
Yeah, the day
which is the gematria of the written word September the 11th. It's 77.
Right. And then if you plug the date September 11, 2001 into gematria, it has an ordinal value of, you guessed it, 154, which is 77 times 2 again.
Yeah.
And if you look at, and again, we were talking about this, I think, on the last show, a lot of this stuff, and I agree with you 100% on this one. Yeah, or you'll have this with the illness, you'll have overlap with this. One of the things that was I found out was the school book depository had the address, I believe it is, of 411. It was either Elm Street or Houston Street. I'd have to go look.
I think Houston.
Right, and 411. The Twin Towers were 411 meters tall. I found that very interesting. So yeah, absolutely. When and again with like Kubrick with Eyes Wide Shut, Under the Rainbow, you're dead on with that.
And the Halloween was actually, all the parts of Halloween are replete with 9/11 symbology, because if you look at
which one's that? Which ones?
The Halloween, all the parts, all the parts of the franchise. If you see, I think in the first part with Jamie Lee Curtis, when you see the tape recorder, it shows on the display 9/11 or 119. I believe something like that, because I watched it a long time ago, but I believe it's 100% there in all parts of the movie.
Yeah, and it is funny where like if you go back in time, the one thing that I also started doing was looking at what were some of the major dates with the Wizard of Oz, and what was there syncs with these, and like for example, the world premiere of the Wizard of Oz, the global premiere was August 25th. You'll always find some things happening around that date, but then I did. The one thing I found out was I went back in time. Other than that, was the actual world premiere of The Wizard of Oz, the actual first showing of it. It occurred in Massachusetts on August 9th of 1939, and of course, years later, 30 years later or whatever, is August 9th is Helter Skelter with Charles Manson. And then the other thing that was just amazing to me, and this is what we get into the one thing I was on with this other show, and I'm preaching to the choir talking to you, is when you look at these tragedies, there will always be these latent Wizard of Oz references. One of the most astounding ones, and I just recently discovered this, was when 9/11 happened. When you go back in time to that date, and this is actually documentable. This is in a thing called the McKenzie Report. The New York City Police Code for a massive emergency, for like all hands on deck, the worst code out there, the major destruction code, was 1060, and it was issued a couple times on 9/11. It was
1016 or 10660.
1060, 1060.
Okay.
And what makes that so unique is, believe it or not, and you could have picked my jaw off the floor when I heard this, was, believe it or not, 1060 is the Wizard of Oz's production code at MGM. So
really,
yeah, when 9/11 hit and they're issuing code 1060, they're literally issuing code Wizard of Oz, believe it or not. That floored me. And then again, and I was on another show talking about this, just the repetition with the number 7 or 777. And I can't remember if I mentioned this to you the last time I was on 9/11. That morning, and this is true, you can go look this up, and this is just a sounding. That morning, 343 New York City firefighters died in the World Trade Center trying to put out the blazes. That's 343 is 7 cubed. And up until that point in time, up until 9/11, the amount of firefighters who died in New York City on duty is 777. That's a sound.
And moreover, the squadron of the fighter jets, which was supposed to cover the Washington D.C. and skies over New York, which is based on the Andrews Air Force Base, which was supposed to be active on 9/11. The squadron which didn't take off on time is number 77.
Yeah,
look it up.
Yeah, wait, it's Venus 77, and Venus in history is a 7-pointed star. It's actually 777 of all things.
Yeah. And it bears even the emblem on the tail, which is representing the goat's head, which is actually on the both Bush Jr. and Bush Sr. They were wearing this military cappy on the American Legion presentations, and it features the goat's head and 77.
Yeah.
And of course, USS George Bush, which has been named a few years ago, right? Number 77.
Well, here, I looked this up. This is even weirder with the ship. And I'll say this real fast with 9/11. Oh, I lost my train of thought with it. But with the ship, George Bush, and here I just pulled this up on my screen. The guy who, the president, who's also a Skull and Bonesman.
Yeah.
He was born on June 12th, 1924. If you use Pythagorean reduction, his birth date has a value of 42. It's CVN 77. CVN has a value of a reverse ordinal value of 42. Its nickname, its motto is freedom at work, which has an ordinal sum of 154, which is 77 times 2. Its home base is the Norfolk Naval Station, which sits on the 42nd parallel, and it's 333 meters. That's the Demon Corazon, and it was built by Northrop Grumman, and Northrop Grumman name has a value of 77 using Pythagorean reduction. Amazing.
And of course, his son George W. Was born on a day when Thomas Dewey picked up the board for World Trade Center in 1946. So basically, George Bush Jr. was born on a day when Thomas Dewey actually defined the board for the future World Trade Center on Manhattan. Would you believe it? So he's actually the birth and the death of World Trade Center.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then the other thing was with him is, and you I'm sure you're aware of this, but there was something also I found out was Bush the president on 9/11 was in Florida reading the school book to the children.
My Pet Goat.
Yeah. Do you know what the name of the book is? That the book that it was in was called?
My Pet Goat.
No, it was in a thing called the Rainbow Edition.
So it's a double name, or is it a subtitle?
It was a workbook. The name of the story he was reading was called My Pet Goat. Hang on, let me pull this up. I'll get you the whole name of it so you can look this up. Let me. The name of the story he was reading was called My Pet Goat, and let me see if I can't find this. Now, where did I put this? Hang on one sec. Oh, here we go. 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
1 second. Oh, I can't find it all of a sudden.
Yeah, a lot of stuff is disappearing, so that's why I'm making all the time screenshots.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. Hang on, let me pull this up here. I'll pull it up on Wikipedia. Here we go. And you can cross-reference this because you can look at the cover of the book. And you're right, this stuff does disappear. Pull this up. Here you go. Bush was reading My Pet Goat, and it was in a larger book. It was an anthology called Reading Mastery Rainbow Edition Level 2 Storybook 1 My Pet Goat.
Rainbow Edition.
Yeah, Rainbow Edition. Huh. How great is that?
Do you remember? Do you remember what the teacher and the kids were chanting in the class in front of George Bush?
No, go ahead.
The kite hit the steel. Would you believe it? Would you believe it? And you know, somebody actually photoshopped. I've seen it probably 15 years ago. Somebody photoshopped the school board, because on the video, which you still can pull up from the Sarasota school where it all happened, you can see it all fuzzy. Somebody pulled it up and photoshopped and converted the steel in steel like stealing, right? And the plane, instead of plane, he put it plane like this, but phonetically it's still the same. But somebody went into the lengths that far, so they even photoshopped in order to make it not too obvious. But it doesn't even matter, because phonetically it's same thing. Whether it's steel or steel, it doesn't matter. It sounds the same.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
It's just unbelievable.
Well, like I said, that's why I think that in some of this stuff, at least some of these numbers, I don't think that some of this. I think there's a supernatural presence here at foot. That's my take on it, at least to a certain degree. You know, because it's just too uncanny that this stuff is popping up like this on all these tragedies, and you just see it over and over again. And like I said, I'm going to be keeping an eye on this one that just happened in Lewistown last night. And I've already got a lot of stuff, but I guarantee you, as this unfolds, there will be more here. That's my opinion.
Exactly, but you know, maybe the purpose of all this occult conjuring within a ruling elite, maybe they kind of influencing the reality, and maybe it is a product of influencing the reality. So what is the purpose of all rituals, starting, let's say, from the ancient priest caste and down to the Athanasius Kirchner and John Dee? So they evoking angels, conjuring demons, and they want to change by occult rituals the reality. So maybe it does change, because why they keep doing all these rituals for thousands of years? If it wasn't for good for nothing, why would Crowley go into such a lengths to perform this extremely difficult ritual of Abramelin, which he was conducting in a Boleskine house? So maybe there is something which is allows them to materialize all the stuff they want to be materialized. So it's just a wild guess. I mean, we still don't know. Maybe just weaving all this, maybe it does alter the reality the way they want to shape it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. I wouldn't discount that. In my opinion, I think it's designating this new age of Horus, or Heru Raha, the age of Aquarius. That's in my opinion what's going on. I think that this thing is if you read Crowley, the godhead of the new age is the goat of Mendes, and I think that this thing is using these tragedies to somehow designate itself, to announce to the world that I'm here. The sun has left Pisces. The sun is now in Aquarius. Worship me or else. That's kind of what I get out of it.
Yeah, and maybe they do believe themselves, and they wanted the rest of the population to believe in it. But whether it does anything in a practical realm, I don't know. But it's a very peculiar question, and certainly deserves the attention.
Yeah, definitely.
Why keep they doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating study. It's by far and away, for me personally, looking at these tragedies, and then discovering these numbers, which are they really, you know, the 77 stands out. 42 can be hidden, but you know, I find it. But it's by far and away, for me personally, one of the most, without question, the most disturbing thing I've ever seen, because you know, you're looking at all this bloodshed, all this carnage. And you know, it's always this little Wizard of Oz sink in there, or citation that really, at least in my opinion, makes this thing, very, very morbid, to say the least. But, I'm still looking at it, and this will all be in my new book, Symbolism 4, which I'm working on right now. Yeah, very, very peculiar, to say the least.
Yeah, and one more tidbit related to the George Floyd story. If you look at the Wikipedia, they actually and the newspaper articles for the past couple of years, they changed the 846 because the first story came out that this Derek Chauvin, the cop, was pressing his neck for 8 minutes 46 seconds, and it was imprinted everywhere and printed everywhere in a newspaper, and even Nancy Pelosi and the entire Senate were kneeling in a foyer of Capitol building for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Right now, they change it according to the new data extracted from the body cameras of the other cops. Now they change it to 9 minutes and 29 seconds, which makes it 9/11.
Right. Yeah. Crazy.
So 846. It was the beginning of the attack on the first tower on September the 11th. 846, right?
Right.
And what is just bizarre? It's just bizarre. At 8:46, the CBC News were airing the commercial with Whoopi Goldberg, where she was presenting some kind of kosher foods by company called Entenmann's. There were some kind of donuts, there were other stuff, and behind Whoopi Goldberg there was a huge clock, and the clock indicated 9/11, and it was aired exactly at 8:46.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but then there's another thing. There's another version of the same commercial with Whoopi Goldberg. She does advertise the same Entenmann's, but I think the donuts instead of eclairs or something like that. But there's still same clock with 9/11, but another setup with two other people present.
Oh, I'll look that up. I'll definitely take a look at that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and then she starts in the movie with Charlie Sheen, 9/11, where she plays the dispatcher. Remember?
Right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, crazy.
And of course, the Entenmann's is 119 in Gematria, the company name.
Yeah,
so
of course.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, you'll always get. I mean, a lot of times you'll always get these crazy numbers popping up. I mean, World Trade Center in one of the values is 77. Twin Towers is 49, which is seven squared. Crazy.
But Twin Towers is TT, so it's 2020. And if you look at one of the most popular songs in 1993, it's a single hit by a group called Corona. Rhythm of the Night, you probably would know it because it was very popular back then. And if you pull up the cover of this of the CD and vinyl, it features the Twin Tower and, of course, the Corona, the name Corona with the crown. And if you slow down the video clip, the original video clip of 1993 by the quarter, so to 0.25. You will see that in the first 1 minute, they feature all string of the occult sigils. It says Seal of Solomon and the other alchemical signs, and it's only visible to the normal eye, at least to my eye, when you slow it down at least to a half, but better to 0.25. Just pull it up and see. And they show.
Yeah, what was the name of the song? What was the name of the song?
The Rhythm of the Night. Rhythm of the Night by Corona.
Okay. I'll take a look at it.
It's an Italian group. The Brazilian singer.
I remember it.
Yeah, but the strangest thing, if you look at the same video clip further, they show in the Broadway and what was playing in the movie theaters and in the shows. It shows actually in 1984. It's not 1993 or 1992. Because I pull up the movies which came out in 1984. It is 1984, so maybe it's even the hint to Orwell's 1894.
Yeah.
Sorry, 1984.
Yeah.
Of course.
No, I'll definitely take a look at that video. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah. So Mr. Floyd, 846 from 846 to 929, which is still the same thing.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see a lot of transformations, and it's better always to download everything and take screenshots, because the stuff which is you think would remain there for years disappears like that. It just within a couple of years, the materials which I was researching for my book just a year and a half ago is gone already. It just never appears in the searches.
Yeah, well, the one thing that was weird was in Wikipedia got caught doing this is, and I'm not going to get all into it, but as you know, when you look at 9/11 with the Pentagon, the number 77 is all over the place.
Yeah, it's 77's parallel. It's 77 feet tall, and of course it's seventh floor, 7 floors, and of course it was ground. It was the beginning of construction is September the 11th, 1940.
Right. Well, and also it was hit by Flight 77.
Yeah, of course. Just an accident.
Dulles Airport also sits on the 77th parallel.
Yeah.
And Flight 77 was airborne for 77 minutes before hitting the Pentagon. And there was something on Wikipedia they changed. They were trying to hide it, and they eventually put it back because it's just too freakish. But Wikipedia got caught trying to change something on that.
The Wikipedia is definitely all the time changing the information which attracts too much attention. But even the things which were circulating very commonly, I mean, you don't think the report by CNN would disappear, but even such stuff is disappearing. So that's why I'm copying and screenshotting everywhere, everything, literally everything.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna watch this video. I want to see this also.
Yeah, just watch it by 0.25.
Okay.
It's within the first 50 seconds, I believe.
Okay, I'll keep it. It's called Rhythm of the Night. And what was the name of the band?
Rhythm of the Night, version 1993, because there are probably more versions out there, because she the singer and the group released the full CD. It came out in 1995, but the single came out in 1993, and I believe it came out in November, and it wouldn't surprise me if it came on November 9th, but there's no data. This is strange. There's no date. I mean, usually you see when the album or a single is being released, but in this case, you don't see it.
What was the name of the band? Corona? Is that the name of the band?
Yeah.
Corona. All right, I'll take a look. I'll find it. Yeah, strange.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. It's been very, very interesting conversation, and I'm definitely gonna watch this the last horror movie, because it's I still didn't watch it. The night. What was the name again? The title. The
Friday
night.
The 13th. Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. Right.
Yeah.
And I have to.
Go ahead.
I have to calculate exactly. Extrapolating to the Julian calendar, what was actually the day of the October 13th and 1307, because there's a debate. The people say it's been fallen on Wednesday, but it's difficult to calculate, because definitely they were using the Julian calendar by that time, and I believe there are calculators which allow to calculate all the discrepancies between two of them, because of course it's adding up different quantity of days every year. It's not always the same ratio. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely worth looking into without question. Like I said, you get into the whole thing with September. It means septum. It's 7/11, 77. So there you go. Yeah, but I've never applied it to the Julian calendar, but my understanding of it was that it was always October 13th, 1307, the Knights Templar being arrested, and that was why it was such a bad luck day. People.
But they use it in the occult coding in the media and the movies. They're using very very often switching from Julian to Gregorian and back, because sometimes it becomes too obvious if you always use September the 11th. So they use it in Julian date, which is, I believe, August 28th or 29th, if I'm not mistaken. And even if you go to the back in 1987, when President Reagan declared, believe it or not, you go to the presidential library of Ronald Reagan, he declared in 1987 September the 11th as the awareness day for 9/11, for emergency number 9/11. So actually, this is the official connection between the 9/11 number picked up supposedly by AT&T in 1968. In the same year, the towers actually were beginning to arise, and the date September the 11th.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy.
And the Korean airliner, the South Korean airliner, went down. I believe it was also related by September the 11th, because they made the commemoration date on September the 11th in 1983. I don't know why they picked up the date, because it went down. It went down on a different date, but why they made it September the 11th, the commemoration date, I don't know.
Yeah, I have to go look, but I think you're right on that. I think I remembered that also. Yeah, I mean, it's strange to say the least. You know, I mean,
it was very fishy. It was very fishy story on its own. It was a Korean airliner, because the bodies and most part of the debris were never found.
Yeah, yeah.
And the Soviets assumed responsibility later, but why would they do it? Well, why actually the physical evidence was never found? That's a good question.
Yeah.
But that's whole another bowl of rice. It's a subject to another full show.
All right. Well, let's call it quits here for right now. We've been for a little over an hour. That's good.
Hour and a half.
Yeah, I think that's good. You know, and we'll come back on this in like 4 or 5 months, and we'll see where we're at. Sure.
Thank you very much, Robert. It was a very exciting conversation, and let's see what we'll pull out next time.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me on, Vadim. It was my pleasure to be here, and I look forward to our next chat.
Same here. Okay, have a nice day.
Oh, just before, I mean, if you could stop recording, just real quick, edit that stuff out from the beginning.
Yeah, don't worry.
Don't worry. You'll get in trouble with that.
I have to also edit